Yourself. So thanks everyone for joining. Today's webinar is focused on employer partnership. Um, Obviously, employers are absolutely vital to your apprenticeship. There's no job, it's not an apprenticeship. And what we want to focus on today is a partnership between those employers and intermediaries and how they work together to develop and grow high quality programs. So we're going to be hearing later from a great panel of intermediaries, Amy and Becky, and their employer partners. Um, just to say a little bit about kind of AFA's thinking here at the start. This is a really big part of AFA's theory of change of how we're going to grow and scale apprenticeships in the US, especially for smaller scale, these intermediaries and the partnerships are absolutely vital for smaller employers to run programs, scale their programs, and maintain high quality. We have these intermediaries who are the experts and can help employers kind of cover up the wiring of the system. So I'm really excited to hear today about how they've built those partnerships, the challenges they've overcome, and how working together has helped grow those apprenticeship programs. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce Amy, who's our moderator today. So the session's being recorded. No need to take any notes. We'll send around the recording afterwards, and we'll have some time for Q&A towards the end of the webinar. So if you've got any questions as we're going along, please put them in the sidebar, and then we'll try and pick them up in the discussion towards the end. So yeah, last thing from me is to introduce Amy Landsman, who's going to be our moderator today. Amy is a longtime friend of AFA and a real subject matter expert on apprenticeship. She's worked with organizations across the country, helping to develop apprenticeship programs and in other areas of workforce development as well. So Amy, thank you very much for your partnership today, and over to you.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Apprenticeships for America, for sponsoring this. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Landsman, and as Harry said, I have been working in the apprenticeship space for several years now, and I've had the pleasure of working with grantees around the country that have received federal funds to develop, support, and grow apprenticeships. And I've provided coaching and technical assistance for many of these grantees, and it's really been eye-opening and really important to see how it's been strengthening over the years, and also the growth of different industries where apprenticeship has really gone into that space. And so when Harry and I were talking and we were thinking of topics that might be of interest to the field, of course, employer partnerships and employer relationship management is there at the forefront for many folks that we talk to. And for several years, I had the pleasure actually of working with the Apprenticeship Building America grant. There's several funding streams for apprenticeship, but I was on that particular one, and I was able to meet some great organizations and groups that were working in the apprenticeship space, and I was so impressed with the employer partnerships that they have. It really became clear that the strong partnerships not only lead to a better experience for the organization and for the employer, but also for the apprentice. That partnership is really the foundation and the root of how apprenticeships grow and strengthen and really expand. And so there were two grantees when Harry and I were talking that came to my mind, or two organizations that came to my mind right away, how impressed I was with the employer partnerships that they have developed in different industries. And so we set up this panel. We asked them to invite their employer partners. And we really want to talk to you today about, as Harry said, how did these partnerships form? And then really go beyond just the partnership formation, because we know that a lot of effort and conversation is how do we reach out to employers? How do we talk about apprenticeships? But really, partnership is not just about the development, it's about the retention and sustainability of that partnership. And I think the folks that you'll be hearing from today have really, they really highlight just how nurturing they are of these partnerships, if you will. And so I'm going to introduce two groups and then have them introduce themselves, and then we'll have a moderated discussion of a couple of key areas that I want to hit on, that partnership development, of course, but what are some of the strengths of those partnerships? What are some of the challenges also as well? And just kind of talk about some of the value adds and some of the advice they have for all of you. And so let me just take a moment to introduce the groups that I have here. First, from upstate New York, we have MACNY, the Manufacturing Association, and I am joined by Amy Stage. So Amy S, I'm Amy L. Amy Stage, who is the Director of Apprenticeship and Workforce Development. And she is joined by her partner, Jerry Irving, who's the Vice President of Human Resources from Moog. We're also going to be having you meet Becky Kickart from the Workforce Development Board of South Central Wisconsin. And she is joined by and Becky is the Director of Development. And she's joined by Marshall Behringer, the manager of UW Health. And so we'll be looking at manufacturing and healthcare, looking at both industries, but also looking at the partnerships. So before we kind of get into some of the panel questions, oh, and I see Bridget has joined us too. Excellent. Okay, so Dr. Bridget Willie, who's the Director of Allied Health Education and Career Pathways, also at UW. I'm sorry, I saw you sneak in there. So we have a great panel. And so before we get into the panel questions and the discussion, and as Harry said, we will have a little bit of time afterwards for questions. So feel free to put in the chat box any questions that you have. Before we get started, I thought it would be helpful to have some introductions, a little bit about the organizations that we have represented here. So I'm going to hand it to Amy first. And Amy, if you'll take it away, tell us about MACNY.
Thank you. So as Amy L said, I am Amy S. I am the Director of Apprenticeship and Workforce Development at MACNY, which is the Manufacturers Association of Central New York. We are a 112-year-old trade association with over 300 industrial and non-industrial members. We offer a wide range of services from advocacy and government relations, training and leadership, and the projects that I'm working on are the workforce development, but we do many other things on top of those as well. So one of our key workforce development initiatives that MACNY oversees is the Manufacturers Intermediary Apprenticeship Program, or because in workforce development, we all love our acronyms, we call it MyApp, which started in 2016 at the request of our members who wanted to utilize registered apprenticeship, but didn't have the internal capacity to start and run their own programs. So currently there's 8 partners from Buffalo to Long Island supporting MyApp and its expansion efforts. 5 of the partners act as intermediaries, and 3, in addition to MACNY, are New York State group sponsors for 27 different trades. The trades include both industrial, such as the industrial manufacturing technician, which is a 16-month trade, to 4-year trades like the manufacturing engineering tech, and non-industrials like software developer, human resources, continuous improvement. And we're currently working on submitting group sponsor applications for project managers and financial services representatives. We've been able to expand our apprenticeship efforts into non-traditional trades due to MACNY receiving the Apprenticeship Building America grant last year. And since inception of the MyApp partnership, we've registered over 1,230 apprentices in New York State with 220 employers. And they range from 1 apprentice to 50 apprentices. So we can help very small manufacturing shops to larger companies as well. And then in addition to our efforts in registered apprenticeship, MACNY has also created 2 New York State Department of Labor direct entry pre-apprenticeship programs as pathways to apprenticeship for participants. These programs are Advanced to Apprenticeship, which focuses on individuals who are neurodiverse, but is open to anyone interested in participating, and our Real Life Rosie program, which focuses on increasing the number of women in manufacturing. We're really proud of both of these programs. The Real Life Rosies was the first manufacturing direct entry pre-apprenticeship program in New York State to be approved. Both programs consist of 12 weeks of instruction, usually meeting 2 times a week. One day includes technical skills specific to manufacturing, and the other day provides training on soft skills. And then each class will participate in 3 to 4 company tours and be provided with interviews for companies that are hiring. And we do request that to participate, the companies have apprenticeship programs. That program to date, 281 individuals have enrolled into those programs. 137 have completed. There's currently just under 100 enrolled in the program across 6 different regions. and 11 of the completers are currently registered in a registered apprenticeship program at 5 different companies. So now, obviously, what I just spoke about is not possible without strong employer partners. So I want to thank Jerry Irving again for joining us. He is the Vice President of Human Resources at Moog, which is an aerospace and defense company in Elma, New York. For those of you that are not really familiar with that, it is near Buffalo. Go Bills. Agreeing to join us today to speak about his experience with registered apprenticeship and for utilizing MACNY as a group sponsor. I'm going to let Jerry give an overview of Moog. I've been on a tour and I know that they do stuff that's used in space and that they've created a simulator for a Spider-Man ride. So he will definitely be able to describe it way better than I can.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for having me, and thank you, Amy. I will get into Moog in a second, but just Amy left out a big part of her bio is that she is a huge Taylor Swift fan. I know this because she drove her family from Syracuse to Toronto to see Taylor last year, but stopped in Buffalo to drop off some MACNY swag for our apprentices. So she's a fan, but she's also works hard. Yeah, so Moog is a aerospace and defense manufacturing company headquartered here in Buffalo. Go Bills! And we're a global company. We have 4,000 employees here in Western New York and another 10,000 around the world. And because we do advanced manufacturing, we need a lot of skilled labor, and we found that we need to develop our own. We need to grow our own people. We just can't keep fishing from the same pond. We've kind of fished out the local market and even beyond that. So we're in the second year of our association and partnership with MACNY. Maybe that's why I never heard of MyOp before. I don't know what that is, but it's okay. I have to say that they have been a tremendous help to us as we've gotten off the ground. We certainly know the value of apprenticeships. We've been in business coming up on our 75th year next year, but and about 20 years ago, we had a New York State apprentice program before I was directly involved, but we got out of it partly for economic reasons, but mainly because everybody felt like working with the state is too much work. It's too much paperwork. And so the intermediary approach with MACNY has been a godsend. It's been a big help for us, really got us off the ground fast, and we intend to continue and expand our apprentice program. So maybe that's enough for now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And now, Becky, can I hand it over to you?
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Becky Kickert. I'm the Development Director for the Workforce Development Board of South Central Wisconsin. Our Workforce Development Board is one of 11 workforce development boards in the state of Wisconsin. And we serve a 6-county region, which is the second largest workforce development region in the state, following just behind the Milwaukee area. So I'll say go Brewers because we're in it for the World Series. So we are built on a very strong public and private partnership that really supports innovation and excellence in workforce development. That's our goals. And we try to maximize access and alignment, but also accountability in building talent pipelines in our region for employers and workers. With that, we target a lot of our efforts around the support of career exploration and work-based learning opportunities, and then also the pursuit of skills training with the ability to earn degrees and credentials and certifications, as well as collaborate with a very innovative talent retention and development strategies here within multiple programs within our region. Throughout our Workforce Development Board region, we have a number of industry sector groups that meet on a bi-monthly or quarterly basis. Those include members in the manufacturing industry, the healthcare industry, and the constructions and trades, which are our driver industries within our region. With that, we facilitate a ton of talent and workforce development programs within our region. We administer over 20 different programs in our portfolio. And some of the most recognized programs that are in our region include both youth and registered, which is adult apprenticeship, as well as we are a recipient of Apprenticeship Building America 2 grant from last year, and our typical WIOA programming that we use in our region. But not all of this, we can't do it alone. We need huge employer champions, and we have a great one in UW Health that makes our programming and our work as innovative as we can possibly be. And we think of tons of pilot programs that create nationally recognized best practices together in our region with the utilization of our workforce ecosystem that is now being seen replicated around the nation. So I would like to take a little bit of time to talk a little bit about apprenticeship. Obviously, that's what we're here for today. The Workforce Development Board is a recipient of state youth apprenticeship funding. Our state has what's called youth apprenticeship consortiums, and our Workforce Development Board is one of those consortiums. There are about 40 consortiums facilitating youth apprenticeship programming within the state of Wisconsin. And our consortium works with over 25 local school districts in our region, serving over 1,000 youth apprentices every year. Those youth apprentices are either earning a 1 or a 2-year earn and learn model program that includes related instruction as well as work-based learning, which is facilitated by our employer partners. In our region, in youth apprenticeship, we have over 700 employers that are employing those over 1,000 youth apprentices. And our largest champion by far is UW Health, which is employing 75 youth apprentices alone every school year. And that has grown and continues and looks to grow in the future, the years ahead. A little bit about registered apprenticeship. Wisconsin, obviously, we were the first in the nation establishing a registered apprenticeship program back in 1911. And we continue to lead the way in expanding into industries beyond the typical manufacturing and construction, which is why we're here today with the employer partner featuring healthcare, because we are creating so many different pathways in the healthcare industry for registered apprenticeship. UW Health was a leader in that, establishing the first healthcare registered apprenticeship program in medical assistant. And I'm sure Bridget and Marshall can talk about that in a little bit. But we have also expanded to multiple other occupations, including registered nurse, respiratory therapist, surgical technologist, and so much more. And we couldn't do a lot of that work without going after competitive resources. I think a lot of what we do in our industry is innovative and competitive. So we have to go and seek resources that we can pilot and create best practices along the way. And doing that, we went after the Apprenticeship Building America 2 grant and received it to expand registered apprenticeship opportunities and youth apprenticeship opportunities in the healthcare industry. So that's a little bit about us, and I will pass it off to Marshall and Bridget to talk a little bit more about UW Health.
Thanks, Becky. Thanks for the opportunity to AFA to be here today and talk about what we've created at UW Health. The Workforce Development Board of South Central Wisconsin has been an amazing partner in this work. And it is a critical partner in our ecosystem here in the Madison region. We also partner within our ecosystem with our K-12 schools, with higher education, but the Workforce Development Board plays a really critical intermediary role in convening, helping us secure these grants that help us get pilots underway. Happy to report that we have partnered with the Workforce Development Board on several different grants, state level grants, as well as the federal grant that Becky just mentioned. We entered the registered apprenticeship space in 2018 with the medical assistant registered apprenticeship, and since then have established 12 registered apprenticeship programs across our health system. We are the largest employer in the state of Wisconsin, second only to the state. And so we do span a good portion of the state, as well as we have facilities in Northern Illinois as well. We have graduated since 2018 in our first cohort of medical assistant apprentices, over 700 registered apprentices who are now very happily working in the areas in which they've trained. And then we were very proud to launch, with the help of the ABA2 grant, an RN degreed registered apprenticeship, followed by a registered apprenticeship, also a degree program in respiratory therapy. And then just this fall launched a third degree registered apprenticeship in surgical technology. So I believe we're one of the first healthcare organizations in the nation to have launched those degreed registered apprenticeships that include everything from prerequisite courses all the way through the core curriculum and earning certifications and those academic degrees that are critical to the success. We're also doing a fantastic job under Marshall's leadership of scaling and developing and using our youth apprenticeship program to as really a pre-apprenticeship strategy to get students interested in healthcare careers, but then also well on the path to pursuing those careers, especially through our registered apprenticeship programs or as traditional students, whatever they elect to do. So happy to hand it over to Marshall to talk a little bit more about how we've developed our very robust youth apprenticeship program at UW Health.
Well, thanks, Bridget, and hello, everybody. Thanks for having us. My name is Marshall Behringer. I'm the manager of youth programs at UW Health. I work under Bridget in allied health education, and I oversee the career pathways programming. We have a small team of career pathways coordinators whose entire work involves helping young people explore and experience careers in healthcare. And our portfolio of programs is robust and stackable. And so we really have programming at every level of the work-based learning continuum, from awareness, where students are just learning that healthcare means more than doctors and nurses. There's literally hundreds of things you can do in healthcare that many don't involve any patient care at all. We also have programming where we have students come and do counseling with the career pathway coordinators, where it's just conversations with somebody who's working in healthcare about what it means to work in healthcare. So it's drop-in advising. And then finally, the youth apprenticeship program, as we've been discussing, is our most intensive program by far. We have this year 75 youth apprentices. This is our fourth year of doing youth apprenticeship. We started with 15. About half of those were nursing assistants, and several were working in outpatient clinics. We've now expanded to 75 in about 14 different operational areas. Nursing assistant is still our largest area by far, making about half of that population. But we've also got youth working in imaging settings, outpatient clinics, histology labs, ophthalmology, physical and occupational therapy, information services. They're across the board, both patient care and non-patient care roles. And these young people are working between 10 and 15 hours a week on average throughout their school year. This is a program that we can only make possible due to partnerships like we've been discussing. So as Becky mentioned, the Workforce Development Board is our consortium lead for South Central Wisconsin. But youth apprenticeship is a collaboration with the board. It's a collaboration with the K-12 districts that we serve. There are 18 school districts in Dane County. We have students from most of them. But it's also a collaboration with community-based organizations, such as Boys and Girls Club, Centro Hispano. Many students are youth apprentices and also involved in programming. One of the things that we take very seriously is making sure that our youth apprentices have a great experience, and that means helping them navigate resources and get the supports necessary to make it possible for them to be able to, for instance, get to and from work reliably and have access to work clothing, scrubs, so on and so forth. So, making programs like this work collaboration's been essential to that process.
Thank you, Marshall. That's actually a perfect segue where I want to start, because I do want to think about that collaboration, and I want to think about how now both of these partnerships have been long established, many years in the making, but I would like to think back and I'd like to include Jerry in this as well. Marshall, Bridget, and Jerry, I'd like to kind of start with the three of you. When you think back to the early stages of the partnership development, I am curious, and kind of as advice for others as well, what resonated with you about both the benefits of apprenticeship, but in particular the partnership with MACNY, with the board, with, what advice do you have, or what approach resonated with you? Because I'm sure you've been approached by other intermediaries or other entities for workforce development partnerships, whether an apprenticeship or other kinds of partnerships. But I am kind of curious about that initial approach and that initial partnership development. What went into you saying yes for this partnership? Then I'll just open it up.
I can jump in. I think we've been working with the board for well over a decade now, in this area. I think apprenticeships on our end have been very much employer driven, because we know what our needs are, and we saw a big national shortage of healthcare workforce coming, and this was pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic just pushed us farther and faster into that healthcare workforce shortage. So we were coming from the aspect of we desperately needed to do something different. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to take care of our patients and provide the access that we want to provide for our patients in Wisconsin. So our work with the Workforce Development Board really started, I want to say back in 2014 is when we first started partnering together. At that time, it was around K-12 education and getting more students into pathways. And so that is also when we had just established our healthcare, health occupations and professions exploratory program, HOPE program, and we're offering summer internships and things like that. We quickly found, partnering with the Workforce Development Board, and looking at our most critical needs areas, that medical assistance, we had a supply versus demand issue in Dane County. We were supporting Dane County, and our local technical college was supporting 3 large healthcare organizations that were hiring about 300 medical assistants. And then the local technical college, unfortunately, was only graduating about 30. So not meeting the needs at all. And that's how our relationship with the board developed. They helped convene and bring us together with other employers who are struggling with the same issues. And that's when we formulated the idea of how about we establish an apprenticeship here. And that apprenticeship has just grown and taken off exponentially. What apprenticeship provides is an alternate pathway for people who cannot, for a number of reasons, access that traditional student pathway. So they have families they need to care for. They have a set of needs that prevents them from being able to work unpaid, which is historically how we've trained people in the healthcare space. So I think the board has been critical in escalating and elevating the value of apprenticeship in healthcare for us, doing convenings, and again, writing for those grant resources with us that enable us to get proof of concept. So we actually secured a statewide Fast Forward grant with the board's help for that first cohort of medical assistants. And fortunately, the return on investment for employers on that pilot was so great that it has just, apprenticeship has just grown in this space. So I think strong partners. The board is in Dane County. We're very close partners. We know that we are all critical to the ecosystem, and the partnership has just grown and deepened over the years.
That's great. Yeah, and Jerry, you mentioned something similar, that you were saying like local hiring wasn't enough anymore. And so, so why apprenticeship? Why MACNY? Why apprenticeships?
Well, why apprentices I referenced before, we need to grow our own talent. We need to, I like the idea of the pre-apprentices is something we're looking at. It's a little bit difficult in manufacturing, but I think we will get there. And why MACNY? So I'm a little bit newer to them. Only 2 years ago, they hit the easy button for me. Okay, or I can hit the easy button with them. They are subject matter experts. I didn't even know what an intermediary was. Probably couldn't even spell it. So they're really, really helpful. And I would say not only on the administration side, but on the counseling side, first of all, they're 2.5 hours away, but they showed up at our place several times in the beginning to brief our supervisors on what their role were and brief the potential apprentices, and so they provide hand holding for all of those people. They hold in my hand all the time. on the administrative side, and they're also helping, they take phone calls, emails from apprentices and from supervisors and mentors. So it's a really great service they provide. Like I said, it's easy to work with them. Amy and her team are really good.
Marshall, did you want to add anything about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I suppose the one thing that I'd add to everything that's been said so far is the board is a great thought partner. And I think that my entire impression of the Workforce Development Board is how can we help? So anytime I have kind of a harebrained idea about something that I'd like to try or do, because in my realm, helping young people learn about careers is more than just talking with young people. There's also helping the adults in those young people's lives learn about career paths as well. And so when I can basically say, hey, Becky, I'd really like to explore doing some sort of an awareness activity or event for teachers and parents. And she says, okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to do that. And that example is basically my entire relationship with the board. Is they're there to help. They're there to help navigate, and they're there to be good partners, without making it feel like, oh, this is exactly what you have to do. You can't wiggle around it. That's the other thing. So.
Yeah. Let's bring Becky and Amy into the conversation for a little bit of behind the curtain. So how do you prepare for that? How did you develop these partnerships? What was some of the behind the curtain to make it easy or to be that thought partner?
I'll go first. I think it's relationship building, right? So one of the biggest things is relationship building and knowing the levers and the pulls that you can pull in your Rolodex. We all have Rolodexes. We're lucky at the board to be that intermediary between employers, economic development, the technical college system, our university system, and our K-12 system, our education that kind of goes from birth to adult, right? So we have the connections to when Marshall has a brainchild, I can go and say, Madison College, how can we partner to do this? Like, we need to do this. It's going to only increase the awareness for not only you as, an education system, for our young youth that are soon to be graduating high school, to know what their career pathway is. They have options. They have many options that are laying in front of them, but we want to be at the forefront in helping with those options. And it's pulling those relationships and having honest conversations. Like, I don't know how many times Marshall, Bridget, myself, and Seth Lenz, our CEO, meet together, probably at least once a month, if not more. And sometimes they're strategy sessions, but sometimes it's also just what's going on, what are the challenges that we're hearing in the community, how can we facilitate fixing all those challenges, and then who are the ones that we need to contact to fix those, or if we want to advance an entire new initiative, who are the innovators in our space that can help push that forward with us. So
thank you. And Amy, before you answer, I do want to apologize to everyone. Jerry had a change in his schedule and he had to slip out. I was hoping to catch him right before he slipped out to get any final thoughts, but Amy is going to talk about their partnership at length. But so I just wanted to let you know that unfortunately Jerry had a schedule change and had to depart a little earlier than planned. But Amy, please, how did you prepare for your partnership with Jerry?
Yeah, actually, so I think we often joke at MACNY too that it takes 7 to 8 meetings with an employer before they're actually willing to really explore or jump into registered apprenticeship. And funny enough that I met Jerry and the Moog team when I went out to Buffalo to do a presentation to a manufacturing class at a local high school. And Moog was very involved with the class. So hearing us talk about registered apprenticeship, I think establishing the relationships and building that trust between the employers and the intermediary is definitely where we've seen the most success. And we're not going out necessarily and doing cold calls and trying to get people to buy into apprenticeship. It's building those relationships and then getting the buy-in for that. But also to both Becky's point and Jerry, with the easy button, I do feel like we try to make it a one-stop shop. So, I mean, Jerry mentioned that they had their own and it was very complicated to get all the pieces to fall into place to keep doing that. So when we're facilitating the related instruction and signing up the apprentices and acting as that liaison with Department of Labor, so they don't have to. They can focus on their manufacturing and doing their job. And when they need help facilitating all these other pieces, we're really there to take care of that for them to make sure their program is successful.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a key role that is defined as a translator, right? Amy and Becky, your organizations are translators for a lot of the requirements, and I think that Jerry was alluding to that. I love that he said he didn't even know what an intermediary was, because we forget sometimes our workforce development jargon, the words that we use all the time are not necessarily commonplace language. So I love that he said that. What other kind of role development? What are some of the key roles? I mean, you know, you've got this 2-year partnership with Mo, a much longer partnership with UW. Like, how over the course of time has the role development changed, or how did you establish role development in this partnership? I think that's a critical component of sustainability of partnership, is that role development. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the role development.
Yeah, I think for us and for the success of any registered apprenticeship, it's being upfront of what all the pieces entailed and who will be doing what. So right from the very beginning, we involved in New York, the State University of New York offers financial assistance for apprenticeship programs in non-construction and building trades. So we brought the local community college to the table right from the beginning to meet with the employer to talk through, here are the options for classes, here's how we could do it. If there's a certain amount of apprentices, we could probably bring training on site. And I know Moog was going through that, trying to develop on-site training as well. So it really, the pieces were clicking into place, but just being upfront of what the rules and expectations and who needs to be at the table to make it work from the beginning, and you're not blindsiding them with new information down the road.
Bridget, did you want to add something to that? So you're shaking your head at how the role development has changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say our partnership with Becky and the board is incredibly dynamic. It changes, and that's what we appreciate about it. They're great thought partners. Whatever we need or identify as a challenge or a barrier, we can always go to the board, and they're always willing to sit down, talk through it with us, offer strategies, help, and support. And I think, but that's the trust that we've built, right? And we've talked a lot about partnerships and personal relationship development. I think key to that is trust. We know we can go to the board literally with anything, and they're going to be wonderful partners in sitting down, talking through things and figuring out what the best course of action is, what resources we have available, what our next steps are. So I would just say it's dynamic. It's continuing to evolve as the workforce needs continue to evolve. And that's been key and very, very important. But that trust and that partnership is only, I think, built through time. But now that we've built it, it's taken off. One of the things we've been able to do, along with the board's help, really is push healthcare into a spotlight for registered apprenticeship in this state. I was amazed to learn in 2024, we became the largest single employer of apprentices in the state of Wisconsin, and we're nearly entirely in the healthcare space with our apprentices. So that was an amazing feat that, again, we could not have done without those key partners.
And then I'll just add one thing and then pass it over to Marshall too, is, you know, we lead by our employers. We need, as a board, as a workforce intermediary, we need to understand what our employers need at what time and what their future needs are. And we listen to them, and that's how we create our programming. We listen, We build trust, we build relationships so that we can build the future workforce that any of our employers need. And I think that's why back in 2018, when medical assistants were identified as a huge need, and then the expansion as we've had from then, it's all in occupations that we know our employers need, and we're employer-led.
Marshall, did you want to add?
Yeah, the one thing that I'll add about the dynamism of our relationship with the board as a partner in all of this work is, and this is one thing that I appreciate about the board, and this is one thing that I appreciate about the Madison region also, is there's a lot of intentional ecosystem development, by which I mean, there are these longstanding relationships between us and the workforce board and the city and the county, and several other large institutions, higher education, so University of Wisconsin, Madison College, and others who've come together and have really taken it. They've made a point of saying we need to work together for the betterment of our community and region. And so a lot of the projects that we're engaged in with the board outside of just building apprenticeship programs, and I say just with air quotes because it's quite complex and lots of partners are involved, but the perspective that we've taken is how do we develop our capital and our assets more than simply build discrete programs. And so I'll give two examples of that. So the first is with the board's help, we have launched an employer peer network of youth apprenticeship employers in our region. And so it started with just large employers of youth apprentices. So really, I can't remember the number, Becky, but it was like 5 or more youth apprentices employed. And that's actually a fairly small number. The majority of employers of youth apprentices have between 1 and 2 youth. We've since expanded that significantly, and the point was to build a collaborative network that meets on a regular basis of employers and mentors of youth apprentices to come and talk about issues specifically facing employers of youth in a work-based learning program. And a lot of really beneficial relationships have come out of that across sectors, across industries. It gives people a chance to talk about problems of practice. It turns out that putting a high schooler into an industry of interest where the point is to help them think longer term and to develop skills that will support them longer term in that industry, it's not as simple as just here's a job. There's a lot that goes into it. And so creating that peer support network has been really, I would say, has been really beneficial, and I'm excited to see where we can take it. The other project is one that we're embarking on right now is, okay, how do we also help? We've talked about all the jargon in workforce development. How do we help develop knowledge in our employer partners, not only about what is workforce development, like what are we even talking about when we say that, but how do we help individuals across all of these organizations, employers, and institutions get to know each other and understand, okay, this is the infrastructure that makes all of this programming work, so that people are better able to navigate resources, understand what's available to help them and the young people that they're working with, but also think longer term about what decisions am I making that could be informed by how this system actually functions under the hood. All of that comes from the board's willingness and really our region's willingness to be very, very collaborative around and intentional about building an ecosystem that supports this work.
I love both those examples because you're really showing also how your partnership has expanded to even further partnerships and further collaboration. So I love those examples. Thank you. Also, a phrase that you said, problems of practice. It got me thinking. No partnership is perfect. Of course, we're highlighting some really strong partnerships right here, right now, but partnerships take work. And so I'm wondering if you could share an example of, a problem you had to solve together as you were building this partnership, as you were building the apprenticeship, something you had to figure out, and how you worked together and how the partnership worked together to solve either a challenge or a problem. Amy, would you like to start?
Sure. Actually, one of the problems in New York State, we love DOL. We work really well with them, but getting paperwork approved does take some time sometimes. So when Moog started their registered apprenticeship program, the apprentices were not able to start class immediately because the school needed the approved forms from Department of Labor. So we had to come up with a solution for the apprentices in the meantime before they could take classes, which they had to wait until the next semester to start. So MACNY actually offers all of our apprentices 1 year free of Tooling U, which is an online learning platform. So they were able to engage and start working on their related technical instruction. So that was a slight setback, but not something that isn't uncommon. So we had a plan in place. And then the other issue that also arose when the participants wanted to get into class was some of the classes were no longer, like they weren't offered or available. So trying to pivot and switch with what classes will work with the apprentice and will make Moog happy with what they need as well. So that's an ongoing issue, not only with Moog, but many companies that we're working with.
And not exclusive to New York either. And
Right.
certainly, but that's a great example too, where you were able to probably help Moog, come up with the problem solving, because as Jerry was saying before, he didn't know what he didn't know about workforce development. And so that's where you can add some added resources and solutions. That's great. How about our Wisconsin partnership? Any, what were some of Marshall's got to go first because he's smiling.
Well, healthcare youth apprenticeships, they are now, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, but currently the most youth apprenticeships in Wisconsin are in healthcare.
Yes, yes.
Historically, that has not been the case. And before just a few years ago, the majority of healthcare apprenticeships were taking place in long-term care facilities, not hospitals. And so we've had to do quite a bit of work leading the way in cultivating youth apprenticeship as a concept in inpatient settings. A lot of that has been lots of education conversations with HR, hiring managers, unit operations, so on and so forth, and really, really making sure that we understood at a deep level youth labor restrictions and navigating statutory regulations, what requires licensure, what doesn't, what is considered hazardous at the federal and state levels, so that we could be very intentional about saying youth under the age of 18 can do these things, they can't do those things. And so basically building scope for young people in these inpatient and other settings. Becky and the board have been really, really helpful in that because I'll put it this way, youth labor restrictions is it can be kind of confusing to navigate if you aren't practiced at reading statutes and navigating these resources. So the board has been extremely helpful in navigating problems in that space and connecting us with state level resources to help get clarity and understanding around things that are appropriate for a young person to do in a hospital and are not appropriate to do. That's actually the most recent example that came to the surface, but it is a big deal because we need to make sure that we're in compliance.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Before I do want to make sure we have some time for questions. So before we get to questions, I guess I have just one final question before I turn it over to the discussion. I guess my final question would be, you've clearly talked about the value add. You've talked about the value add as an employer. You've talked about the value add as an intermediary. Clearly, your strong partnerships have a value add for the apprentice. I guess if you have any final advice for folks that are on this webinar that are either starting new partnerships or trying to strengthen their existing partnerships with employers, what advice do you have for our audience here? Or final words of wisdom, if advice sounds too much.
I would just offer up, don't take no for an answer. I think that's what one of my earliest challenges that I worked through with the board and also with our state agency, because we're fortunate to have a state agency in Wisconsin and not work directly with the federal Department of Labor. But the board was critical in connecting me with our state agency folks when we were first exploring medical assistant registered apprenticeship. We had gone first to the technical college system for the related technical instruction, and what we got was an immediate, no way, we're not doing this, it doesn't belong in healthcare, but was able to then come back and work with the board and our state agency to secure funding to stand up our own in-house registered medical assistant program. And now the technical college system has followed suit and gotten more creative and a little more, they have broadened their view on how they view registered apprenticeship in healthcare. So not taking no for an answer, but also developing and continuing to develop those critical relationships in your ecosystem, especially with people who can help you work your way through these sticky problems and or when people are saying no.
I love it. I love it. Marshall, any advice? Words of wisdom?
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't take no for an answer is pretty good advice. I think that one thing that really helped me as I was getting started with building youth apprenticeships in the hospital environment was I spent time doing what we call go-and-sees with entry-level roles. So once I was able to identify a job title that was considered entry level, that really only required a high school diploma on the required education level, I went and did go-and-sees to say, okay, this is what this position is doing on a day-to-day basis, and then I would compare that with, you know, labor restrictions and regulations, and I would compare that with you know, the state of Wisconsin has published competency lists for a variety of youth apprenticeships in healthcare. And I was able to mix in or do a comparative analysis between what was published and what we actually had at the hospital. And I could make the case to HR and operational leaders, look, here is this role. This is the scope of this role. And of that scope, only this little bit can't be done by a minor, but the rest can be done. And in a registered youth apprenticeship with state, they're allowed to get out of school to earn school credit toward this, you know, toward this experience. So not taking no, but also do an analysis of what roles do you currently have that are accessible and entry level that could be scaled down even just a little bit to be appropriate for a high school student. We're actually engaged in that project right now in the emergency department, which I'm really excited about. So
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Becky?
say, yeah, real quick, don't take no for an answer. And if you get a no, be ready to negotiate and negotiate in your way, because you will get what you eventually want. Because if you bring the right partners to the table, they will be loud voices for you. And those loud voices are your employer partners.
Yeah, you've clearly established champions. I love that. Amy?
I would say don't try to reinvent the wheel if you're interested in getting into registered apprenticeship. There are so many resources and tools out there, depending on whether you're a state agency or an OA state, whichever. There's so many resources out there. There's intermediaries out there as well that can help you. We are a group sponsor, but we also provide technical assistance for companies who have their own programs to make sure they're maximizing their benefits. So I think all of us on this call we're definitely apprenticeship advocates and just want people to succeed, whether we're the ones doing it or supporting you in doing that as well. So definitely try to reach out and use your resources.
I love that. And I was jotting down different words that you all said, as it's kind of like what I thought was kind of words of wisdom that you've said for advice for others. And I have navigator, translator, thought partner, storyteller, collaborator, innovator, and advisor. And I think that those are key components that you bring to these strong partnerships. And I think you've all exemplified that. Harry, I know you've been monitoring the chat box. Is there some questions for the group or comments that we should share as we wrap up?
Thanks, Amy. We've got a few minutes left. So yeah, there's a couple of questions in the sidebar which try and pick up. Kevin asked a question about funding, which is essentially who's paying for the program. Bridget, I think you explained how yours works, but Amy, can I ask you to talk a bit about how your program is funded, who pays for the different component parts?
Yep. So we in New York, MACME is a recipient of multiple grants, both state and federal, which does help offset the cost of registered apprenticeship. The employer is paying for the wages of the individual in the registered apprenticeship program. We have been really beneficial in the last few years to have an apprenticeship expansion grant that has paid to offset some of the initial wages. The other great thing is that workforce investment boards, depending on the region, have also paid for some of the on-the-job training wages. So really trying to braid funds wherever they can be. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the State University of New York pays for the related instruction for 2-year community colleges. So if the program is 2 years or less, the apprentice receives $6,000 towards related instruction funds. And if it's over 2 years, then they receive $8,000 towards their apprenticeship program, which really more than can cover the cost of whatever classes they need to take. And then as a group sponsor, we try to find incentives and other grants to help with employers. So if there's tools or other things that are costs that come up, that usually we can help find some type of incentive for companies as well.
Thanks, Amy. And that kind of speaks to another role of the intermediary that we haven't touched on, which is helping to find funding and grants to cover various bits of apprenticeship. There's also very interesting discussion in the sidebar. We've heard a lot about the kind of Wisconsin youth model. There's discussion about other states that have seen success tapping into high school students. I'll just add a bit here from AFA's perspective about what we're seeing across the country. You know, still the average age of an apprentice is 29. The high school model is fairly new for a lot of states. I think not Wisconsin, who have had high school apprentices for nearly 100 years or so. But a few others to highlight. Indiana are doing some really interesting things on youth apprenticeships and working out a kind of dual enrollment system for their high school students for them to start youth apprenticeships. I think California has been mentioned. California's got specific funding for youth apprenticeships. There's also a bill being introduced that's trying to help sort out some of the kind of regulatory issues in the education code that make it difficult for high school students to take apprenticeships. Those are two examples that come to mind. I don't know if anyone else on the panel has got any other examples of states doing interesting things on youth and high school. No, well, we did talk about.
Harry, all I would say is Wisconsin's youth apprenticeship program started in 1991. So it was well after our registered apprenticeship program, but I will say so that's what, 30-ish years old. And it does take a lot just to get off the ground. And we're just lucky in Wisconsin that the federal government does not give the states any money for youth apprenticeship. It's really kind of state run. In our state, it is through the state budget process. So our state legislature grants us funds to do that in Wisconsin. And luckily in Wisconsin, we have been getting $10 million every year. And luckily with our last state budget which passed in July, they upped that to 12.5 this year and 13.5 million in the next year. But I think it's definitely a work-based learning strategy that is taking, it's gaining steam, and you can see that by California's investment in it with their governor, and then also some other states that are jumping on board like Indiana and others too.
Brilliant. Thanks, Becky. I'm afraid we're at time. So I'm gonna start closing us out. Final thing for me, I just want to repeat something that Jerry said earlier about intermediaries, that they hit the easy button for him. I think that's a great that's a great depiction of, you know, how these partnerships can work brilliantly, making things easy for employers, helping them navigate what can be quite a complex landscape. So yeah, a big thank you to the Amy's, Jeff, Bridget, Marshall, and Becky for sharing your expertise. It's really fantastic to see these partnerships. I'm sure this has been really useful for anyone. And any employers in the room or intermediaries who are looking to grow, please reach out to Amy and our panel to learn more. So yeah, I will wrap up here, and thank you everyone for your time.